uplifting the people, and uniting the nation.
What does it take to step into the shoes of broadcasting legends like Frank Olize, Abike Dabiri, and Ruth Benemesia Opia, and make the role your own? Let's find out. This is Click Nigeria online radio channel. Do well to follow us on all our social media handles to catch up. On YouTube, it's at Click Nigeria, Facebook, Instagram, and X at Click Nigeria 1. You can also log on to our website at www.clicknigeria.gov.ng, and you can also search for us on Radio Garden. It's Click Nigeria. My name is Adeyinka Aravai, and I have with me Claire Adelabu-AbdulRazak, the Assistant Director of News at Nigerian Television Authority, anchor of the flagship Sunday evening program, Newsline, and the pioneer anchor of the Goodmorning Nigeria on Nigerian Television Authority. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, from your early years at the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria to a career that has spanned some of the most defining moments in Nigeria's media history, Claire's journey offers a rare window into the evolution of journalism in Nigeria and what it takes to remain relevant in the constantly evolving media space. So I know you lived within the environs of the broadcasting house in Ikoyi at the time, assisting your mother, at a provision store where he served the member of staff of the FRCN at the time. And you also referred to the child of the broadcasting house. Now looking back, it's 75 years. FRCN celebrates its 75th anniversary. What's the feeling like for you?
I really don't know what to say. I'm already having goosebumps. Like I told you when I stepped in here. Whenever I hear people talk about Radio Nigeria, FRCN or NBC, as it was called in those days, I feel at home. I feel like I already, knew the person. So whenever I see you, and I'm like, oh, which media do you represent? If you say Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, you're already my sister. So that's how I feel. I feel FRCN, whether Radio Nigeria, FRCN, it's home for me. It's home for me. It gave me a foundation. It built me. And you must also know that I didn't study mass communication, never had any practice or any formal experience, as a broadcaster. So whatever you hear me say today or whatever you see me do today was what I learned growing up within the presence of the broadcasting house, BH, as we used to call it then. Like you rightly said, how we found our way to live within the BH then, I really can't tell. That's another long story, which I'm building into my memoir, God willing, if I'm able to finish it. But somehow we got to, my parents and I, my siblings, we got to live within the BH, premises. It was actually, in those days, the shanty, where you have the zinc thatched roof and all that, and all that. So, and I was quite young. I was very young, maybe early primary school days. My mom used to have a table, somewhere along, the road. And by the way, BH in those days, located at Ikoyi, adjacent to the Ikoyi Cemetery. In fact, our house, my house where we lived, the fence shared boundary. We shared fence with the cemetery, Ikoyi Cemetery. Okay. And I'm sure you'll be shocked. So that's where I lived with my parents and my siblings, and I was going to school. And I helped out with my mother. At first, we started with the tray, cigarettes, biscuits, and all that. And as time went on, that tray, grew, developed, and then from the table, my mom had this kiosk which was erected just opposite the in-gate at the beach. Then it was known as the NBC, Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation. Yes, and that's how it all started. So that's where I lived. That's where I grew up. That's where I ran. In those days, Yorubas would say, I don't know, you can translate that. So the most streetwise child,
Okay.
yes, running around and doing all the stuff for all the broadcasting house staff.
That's very interesting, actually, because I'm very conversant with that vicinity myself. I haven't worked in the broadcasting as Nikoyi at the time. You said something that really interests me. You said you didn't have a background of the media. So I'm inquisitive. What did you study?
For my
Undergraduate days.
yes, for my first degree, I read philosophy.
Okay.
And philosophy was because I listened to programs on radio and at the time also on television. I had so many uncles within the broadcast industry.
Okay.
So every person who worked between 1976 and the time I left in the early 2000s, all uncles and aunts to me. So Uncle Emmanuel Udu, I think he runs a Catholic church, whatever, was a presenter in Voice of Nigeria. Voice of Nigeria and FRCN shared twin complexes. So, and he went to the seminary. I think he left and came and read philosophy. So he had a program. He had a program on radio. I always listened to it. And whenever he, had his break, he would come to my mom's store and he would say, Chichi, because everybody called me Chineke, my mom, Mama Chineke. So Mama would come, Chichi. I'll say, Uncle Ma, I can see your script. So he would show me. So I learned a lot from Uncle Emmanuel Udu. And then there was a program on TV, Is It True? Is It True was a philosophical program that was anchored then by, I think it was Professor Kingsley Anyao and C.S. Momo, Dr. C.S. Momo, I think that name. Is It True was a philosophical program. So both programs inspired me, and I was like, okay, I was going to, read philosophy. So, and basically, after my HA higher school level, I didn't make the usual 9 points to study, mass communication in those days.
Okay.
So I didn't go to university immediately. So I stopped and helped out, my mom as usual. There's so many things that I can't relate here that I did growing up. But while between that time, I had gone to the FRCN training school.
Okay.
So that was my basic formal training as a broadcaster. And not because I was, good or whatever. Late Khalifa Baba Ahmed saw something in me, noticed something while I was, doing the educational service programs. In those days, we had educational service arm of the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria. So I was the child teacher, and the MI would come to our house. So that was my basic formal training as a broadcaster. And not because I was, good or whatever. Late Khalifa Baba Ahmed saw something in me, noticed something while I was, doing the educational service programs. In those days, we had educational service arm of the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria. So I was the child teacher, and the MI would come to our house. She come and voice tested for me. So I was practically trained even before I attended the training school. So Khalifa said, called out to Sidney Ufeli and Uncle Sonny Rabble, because both were the ones handling the training school at the time.
Okay.
And it was under the foyer of the external service of the Voice of Nigeria. That was where it was located before it moved to Shogole.
Okay.
So I think I was the last set, to be trained at the BH premises. So I never said, Sydney, and they said, include Chinera in your next training, and that was it for me.
That's really interesting. So when you look back on your journey, what would you say was a defining moment in your career? At what point did you know that broadcasting was truly your path?
Can I tell you the truth? Yes. I didn't know anything. I was not exposed to any of the career path. Nothing. I mean, if you know my background, I really came from a very humble background, very humble. And I told you where I lived with my parents. And we had moved from one shanty thatched house from Arubu. If you know Abalende very well, I'm an Abalende babe, I moved, we moved. So I wasn't exposed to any other career. I went to Army Children's School, Jordan Barracks. I wasn't exposed to any other career. It was just BH, and everybody wanted to, tutor me. Everybody wanted to mentor me. Late Uncle Ernest Okonkwo, came and said, Mamachi, I want to train your daughter to be first female commentator, football commentator.
Oh.
And he will take me. He will come, he will take me, teach me. But I guess that wasn't what I was cut out for. There are so many people. Jacko, we used to call him Jacko, Uncle Jacko, Christopher Folabi, ABC, and Priscilla Gansare, she's delightful now. Yes, she's not as delightful now.
Alfred.
We used to know her. Yeah? Alfred, well, yes. We used to have Priscilla Gansare in those days. Then we had Evelyn Russell, so all of these people, but most importantly, Emma Ebu insisted. She kept, propping me up with presentation, in the educational service. And I also did drama sketches, Gandu Street. I was part of Join the Bandwagon by Aguda and Bola Johnson in those days, even as young as I was.
It's really been a journey since early, and it's quite fascinating to hear you relive all of this. So your journey began at the FRCN, and later you became the pioneer anchor of the Good Morning Nigeria. How did those early years define your role and shaped your role as the broadcaster that you are today?
A lot of people will tell you this is today. I think I was just a child of grace. I think I was just a child of grace. Everything I am today, is by the grace, special grace of God. And I will tell you that, for free. Everything I am today is by the special grace of God. Because after the training school, which was the only formal thing I had learned in FRCN, after that, whenever you finish your training school, you observed for 3 months. We had a chair just beside the DCAs. Today we call them, yes, they call them, we know them as DCAs. So we were rostered to work alongside with the DCA, and your role there was to basically do voiceover programs for all the producers who come, and you also go to the Grand Library, and then you compile music programs for the DCA to play. We used to have music while you work. We used to have music for those at home. We used to have music, if you're going home, we used to have all sorts of music for, different times and different. Yes, but after that, somehow, again, I kept going. I was a child, so I was moving, and then I would go from theater, Nikon, to stage performances and all that. Somehow, I don't know how it came about. DBN spotted me.
Okay.
DBN TV spotted me, and that was my first formal employment in 1993 after FRC. And by the way, I was already doing youth scene for NTA. I was presenting youth scene for the NTA. Yes, I did that for 5 years, after my training from FRCN. So you see what FRCN has done for me.
Exactly.
So DBN employed me, and I was the first face to see on DBN television, in those days at Adelabu-AbdulRazak. So I was with DBN for 5 years, and then later I kept moving to Minaj Broadcasting International. Yes, I was with Minaj for about 15 years. 15 years before I returned. This time as a permanent staff with the NTA. Of course, when you return as a permanent staff, your years, because you were in the private service, your past years didn't count.
Okay.
It didn't count, so you were made to start as a fresh civil service. But in my case, because I had been with them, so I was started on a little higher, level. Yes, because of my experience with them and all that. So you see, all of those helped me. Nothing, no formal thing,
Okay.
So you see, when you say, I want to go to this training, I want to go to, it's just mere observation. You watch and listen. I listen to people, I watch TV a lot, I watch other people, I see what they do right or wrong, I watch other private, in the foreign channels and all that. And because maybe I had a passion for it, or I don't know, maybe it was just inbuilt, or maybe this is what God just said, look, this is what you
And I
do.
think you had a very great supportive system around you. People that, noticed your capability.
You know
and,
what? That's very fundamental. That's very fundamental. And I tell everyone today, if you're a leader, please look out for talents. No matter how placed they are. Try and spot talent. I was a nobody. I was a nobody. I would run errands. Somebody would call me maybe from the glass. I'm sure you know the glass in west of Nigeria. Yes. My mom's kiosk was just there, and I would stay, put my head outside the kiosk, and I would look at it, and somebody, maybe late Collins Atoybe, would call, bring me this, and I knew everything everybody wanted. I knew what everybody wanted, I knew what the soldiers there wanted, and by the way, I witnessed all the coups.
We'll get to that in a bit. So Newsline is a program with such a rich legacy, you'd agree with me, and once caught by the legends like Franco Lisa, Abike Dabere, and Ruth Benemesio Opia. What did it mean to you to step into that role, and how you've been able to manage the program to make it your own?
Uncle Patrick also works at the NBC, Radio Nigeria. So I've known him all my life. Same as Ruth Benemesio Apia. Then she was FRCN used to have a symbiotic relationship with the NTA. So some of them would come to NTA, FRCN, take the news, and vice versa. FRCN staff will go to NTA and also take the news. So we had this joint collaborations. Okay. So I knew most of them, and some of them would come like Shimamali, Jimamo, late Mike and Hour. You must have heard of late Mike and Hour. So they would all come. So when I got into NTA, it was amazing because I had been away from TV for a long time. All the time I was in the Naija, I was a field reporter, I was a bureau head. So for 14 years, I wasn't active on TV. So when I got back to NTA, and miraculously too, I got back miraculously, but that's another story, So somehow some people knew me. Uncle Series Toba, they all knew me, growing up. And somebody said to somebody, see, that madam, don't joke with her. She's been in the business. So somehow my boss heard it, and I didn't know he was planning. For 2-3 weeks, I wasn't doing anything. I was just writing reports. Okay. So Sunday he said, Claire, I want you to, there's a new program I want you to handle. You can imagine. I said, okay, So I don't know where the courage came. And that was late. The program was early edition. Early edition ran alongside AM Express then. Okay. On NTA News 24. So we did early edition. I did early edition with Ibrahim Adra. Ibrahim Adra worked here as well. He was here in FRCN. Yes. So we did the presentations together early morning. I started 3 times in a week and all that. Until Uncle Shala Omade, came as the chief and decided to start something new. I said, look, people were complaining about AM Express, and let's do something different. Let's transform early edition into Goodmorning Nigeria. At first, a lot of people didn't think I was capable of handling it. So, but somehow somebody said, no, we can't do that. So somebody was brought in, a gentleman, I won't call his name. A gentleman was brought in, as a contract staff, and I was to pair with this gentleman. Imagine pairing with a man who had been a commissioner for information, who had been an SA, who has been in government, so he knows all the policies and all the data and everything,
Deeply
over
ingrained.
years. And here was me, Claire, with no pedigree, nothing, So what did I do? The advantage I had was I was a broadcaster. I knew the profession ethics, mannerisms, and everything. So while he was raw, he would dish out the data and everything together. I would come him down. So I would bring the broadcast perspective and broadcast ambience. I found this right. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot. And if you like to know, I'm talking about Barrister Kingsley Osadona, a first class lecturer from University of Nigeria. So I learned a lot. I can't tell, learned so much from him. So over time, I learned Kingsley's, angles. But how does he come up with such questions? Here, I started reading. I started researching. Yes. I started researching, I started reading, I started doing, so what does Uncle Kingsley do that I don't know? So that's what, and I started. But today it's almost 14 years. I've been all other pioneer anchors, they've all gone, I'm still
Standing.
Newsline. Newsline is NTA's baby. It took it. There's things I shouldn't say, but it took a lot of what else is it? Let's I said, no, clear. So one administration came and left. This one came, and my other said, Claire, come and be reading the news segment of Newsline. News segment too, not the main program. So I said, so the younger staff was taking the main Newsline. So I read the news segment, and I would go. I think it was a time Lagos had issues. So someone said, please, Claire, come and take the Newsline. So, and I knew Newsline in the days of Uncle Frank was down to earth, conversational. No airs, it's like talking to people, at home, speaking to people directly. But the stories were quite different. The treatment of those stories were quite different from the hardcore news reports. I knew that. And I knew what Sister Bike Gabiri also did. She was very thorough. She would sit down, look at each story, video clip that had been sent in, preview those scripts, rewrite the intros herself to suit her personality, to suit the language, her English, vocab, to suit her personality. So I said, okay, I know go to all these ones. Me, I'm Claire, and I'm a bridge broadcaster between the old and the digital new. So I fit in. I did the first Newsline presentation when the main anchor in Lagos was in the village. And that was it. And Newsline never returned to Lagos.
Amazing. Thank you for taking us through that journey. It's quite beautiful. So who were some of the people you looked up to? I know you've mentioned quite a few, but you should have major mentors who, shaping you to being who you are today. Those you find worthy, that's kept you in this path of broadcasting. What exactly it is that inspired you when you see that?
First, I like poise. I like for presenters to have command, and I like integrity. And I saw that in Sienna Owen-Brown. And Sienna comes on screen, you'll hear, I'm Sienna Owen-Brown. She tells you her name, and you see the confidence. And then you'll hear Uncle Sunny Irabo. I am Sunny Irabo. Gives it to you, confidence. And then on the foreign scene, I don't have any other person but Christian. Because of her prowess, her interviewing prowess. And every day I look up to her. I want to, and I said to myself, oh God, I thank you for giving me what you have given me, but please help me. So yes, these people, I still look up to them. I play them back in my mind's eyes when I'm going on air. I play them. But my personality, as Claire, I also add. Because what people want to see when you come on air, when they listen to you, on radio, is confidence. You speak with confidence, authority, and then that voice. I like that voice. First of all, I like the way she even speaks. I like, her ambience. I like the personality she is good. So these people, and indeed a whole lot of other people that I can't mention their names, and I can't say thank you enough to all of them. Everybody that worked in broadcasting house, did one thing or the other for me and for my family, and I'm forever grateful to every one of them.
I'd like to add to what you said now. I think originality is also important in this. As much as you listen to all of these persons, your original self should also set the pace for you. So you also witnessed the defining moment in Nigeria's history.
I'd love to tell these stories.
I know. Including the Dinka coup in 1976, as well as the Gideon Oka coup in 1990. Yes. So how did these experiences shape the way you understand journalism and its responsibility?
When I came here the other day, first thing I asked, I think Elijah, Mama? Yes. First thing I asked him when I went to the studio, okay, is it bulletproof?
Okay, you're safe.
Yeah. And then, is it bulletproof? And honestly, I love to tell the stories because all the stories told about the Dinka's coup and Gideon Oka's coup were from perspectives of presenters, who worked within the FRCN, but not from the child's eye view. As a child, we're more inquisitive, and conscious of our environment. So I took in, and at that stage of my life, and I'm surprised, a lot of people are surprised that I could remember every detail, and I did. 1976, I don't even know how old I was. I was in primary 2, I can't remember, or 3 or thereabout. But that morning, somehow I didn't go to school for fear of something, I didn't go to school. So my mom said, as a punishment, I had to go and look for water to fetch.
Okay.
Now that gave me an opportunity to stray. You know that area very well. Ministry of Information and Enlightenment, there, as it was called, was on the other side. Ministry of Labor was also on the other side. They shared this structure and all of them. And that corridor led you to Adelabu Close, where the Federal Secretariat then was. Yes, and of course the intersection, 2nd Avenue, Bank Road and all that. So that morning, instead of going into VH to fetch water, I took my bucket with my, I told you earlier, so I just took the bucket, put it on my head. Instead of going through the main road, I said, no, I passed through the cemetery, played with the mangoes at the cemetery, meandered my way, shouted, took my time, and then I tossed it out at the intersection and that one closed. So I fetched water. Of course, cried everybody. It was in the morning. So put the bucket on my head. So I was about to turn. Because I didn't know where the sound came. I'd never heard a gunshot before in my life. I don't know what it was. I had never. But the sound, goodness, everybody. My bucket of water fell and I took to my heels. And I ran. I followed everybody else and I ran. By the time I got to the in-gate, it was a barrage of soldiers. Everybody.
The broadcasting house?
Yes. It was everybody. And then people were whispering, they don't kill him. Watch out, they don't kill him. Me, I just ran into our shanty, Peter. before you knew it, everybody in my, was a 4-bedroom, shelter. The other neighbors came to our house, our one room, and we took shelter there. We had a rental carpet, in those days you had this rental carpet on. So we took cover. Just before we knew it, bullets started raining. And then I don't know how long we were there, but the bullets kept piercing into, our room. And then once they land on the rental carpet, they just
stopped.
Yes, they stopped. So my dad then picked up quite a number of bullets, So after a while, we had all civilians come out. We didn't know who, they were referring to. So all of us in that place, we all came out. And then we were running towards James George. James George Street. James George Street, just behind FRCN. But if you enter through Alagbon Close, yes.
Turn to your right.
Yeah. Alagbon Close, going to the Alagbon prison,
Okay.
Straight down is James George. You used to have the National University Commission's Trust. Yes. So, but from FRCN, it was just the barbed wire fence that separated FRCN and the rest of James George. So we all faced backwards, rushing to God knows where, and we're going to James George. So while we were all trying to make our way to James George, here was this man, tall, lanky, was trying to pull the barbed wire off. And I said to him, sorry, Oga, see barbed wire. He didn't even say anything, he just said, and then he followed us. He ran while we ran to James George. You know where we went to? We sought refuge in the home of the Otarus. I'm sure you must have heard Gabriel Otaru. With Gabriel Otaru, he works. He's late now. So we went to their home. We stayed there. And apparently they didn't know anything had happened.
With the gunshots?
They didn't know. They were just having in the talking. Until we now had another sporadic blah, 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 blah. That was when they dawned on everybody. We were there till the next day. It was later, much later, I heard that the person I had spoken to was Tinka.
Oh my. The lanky man?
The lanky man.
Trying to pass through the barbed wire?
Yes.
Oh my.
Was Tinka.
Okay.
So it was quite that was my first.
So what was he trying to do? Was he trying to escape?
Of course, yes. Yeah, he was trying to escape. And if you go to the history, the story was that he escaped through the barbed wire, through the Alagbon Close, and made his way.
Oh. Okay.
Yes, and it was in a safari. So I could tell, everything.
This is deep.
Yes.
This is deep.
Mm-hmm. So, and then I was a child, I was a child. Then the August school, I was already doing my programs. I was presenting family favorites, and Priscilla used to present it. I think she handed over to me. It's one of the flagship, FRCN programs in those days, yes. So I was presenting family favorite and other programs. But I was also staying, my mother's kiosk. On a Saturday, I would go to Ikoyi. I would stay. Then we were not living within FRCN. We had moved to Ije Police Barracks, the Police House and Estate, which is also very close, shared boundary with the cemetery on the St. John's ambulance side of it. So, this day, the story is long, but let me just cut it short. The soldiers, after Dinka school, soldiers were then deployed to FRCN. From 3 areas, you had the infantry, you had the Riki Battalion we used to call, 245 Riki Battalion, from Bonikam, Keja. The infantry came from Bonikam or Jordan Barracks. Yes, and you had the signals. But all of them, were led by either a captain or a lieutenant. Say they had lance corporal, sergeant, second lieutenant, and captain. And they were changed every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, they changed. On this particular day, one of them, I would call his name, very friendly. Very friendly. I know him very well. I would take the tea, I would take everything to the room, because they had a room very close to the gramophone library. Downstairs, the studios were up. The studio A and B were downstairs. Recording studios were downstairs. The live studio was upstairs, yes. So the soldiers' room, was located just down beside the gramophone library. Sinners, friendly staff would go joke with the officers and all that. And me, I didn't need a visa to go there. Once they say breathe, I would go and cross India. So I was familiar. And this guy came on that Friday. He was brought in, and then suddenly, before 2 weeks, it was changed again. And I'm like, it didn't matter, it's a long time. But one thing, when he came on a Friday, he came with a metallic 505 American spec. American spec. Yes.
American spec. At the time to use American spec.
Yes. American spec. It was metallic. It was brand new. So there are people, it's like, okay, let's go and celebrate. Saturday, he went to Aburi. You know where Aburi is now? Aburi is opposite St. John's Ambulance, Obalende Bridge.
Okay.
Aburi is the restaurant where everybody, or where FRCN staff used to unwind. So they went to Adelabu, had celebration, the new car and everything. My mom had not come to believe me, so I was there. He came and said, "Small girl, where's your mom?" I said, "Uncle, my mom is not around." He said, "No, now go home. Now go home." I said, "Okay, sir." So my mom came and said, "Uncle, say make we go." My mom said, "Okay." So at about 9 p.m., finished, packed up, and then we went home. Trust my mom. At 2 a.m., my mom woke me up. I said, "I hear gunshot." I said, "Ma, gunshot." I said, "Okay, let's wait." By 4, we knew something had happened. By 4, we knew something had happened. And then when the martial music came on, yes, everything. In fact, nobody could go anywhere. Nobody. Later, I got to know that the team they sent to counter the dissidents, overpowered the team. So the message somewhere said, go to FRCN. If you can't take over the team, bring down the structure. Part of the damage, the 3 emblem you have there, the 3 tribe emblem. The 3 tribe emblem on FRCN, if you go into Obalende, the 3 tribe emblem represented the 3 major tribes of Nigeria, and it was there. And it was one of the things damaged. I won't go further than that.
Let's just leave it at that. You've really seen a lot, and you've experienced a lot. And
the Shagariku, I was living in Adelabu Close, the CEU, Central Engineering Unit, where I was living. The Adelabu prison, the fence as high as, but in the morning you hear, "I am Elema, praise the Lord." I don't know the lyrics, but that's it. "I am Elema, praise the Lord." So you would always hear, he was there. They say, they don't need to, it was bloodless. There was wasn't eventful. So, these schools, but regardless of these things, I dread the cemetery. I dread the cemetery, and I don't know. I keep asking, why should I, when I had lived most of my lives, next to.
You have remained visible, relevant, and respected through different eras of broadcasting. What would you say is the secret to your longevity, and how have you been able to manage to evolve with the industry as it changes per time?
Talk about longevity. I'm still young now. I never old. By the grace of God,
No, it's good that you remind yourself of that.
Yes, I'm still young. Just that I started, at a much earlier age. You understand? So talking about longevity, I don't know what to say to that. I'm still expecting to know. But yes, what do you want me to say now?
No, you just give us a secret. The young ones, the
You
young
know,
mind.
The thing is that I like a private life. This is the first time I'm going to talk to anybody about my life or my growth or my background. Uncle Osaze Yam has been asking Claire. But this is the very first time, and I'm happy I'm doing it on radio, your online Radio Nigeria, and I'm very happy I'm doing it here. And I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really don't talk about, my private life is my private life. I don't let TV, what would I call it now? TV life. It doesn't influence me. It doesn't. I don't let it get into my head. I never let it get into my head because I've seen other people. I don't let it get into my head. Once I'm off screen, I am clear.
Okay.
Once I'm off screen, I am a home person. I am a wife. I am a mother. I am a sister. I'm a sister-in-law, and I play my roles. I have no regrets, and I'm deeply spiritual. So I know my boundaries. I don't let the glamour or the trends, because TV has a way of putting pressure. It's either you want to look good, you want to look like other people, you want to wear gold. If you've seen me, I don't let people affect me. So that has helped me. So when you see me out, this is clear. And I say, yes. But you won't see me compete with people. I am myself. I know my life. I know the path God has built for me and my family. So once I leave after TV, I love to go to the warm embrace of my husband and my children.
So this brings me to ask the question. I know you've achieved quite a lot. The resume is really full. And you're also a PhD candidate awaiting your external defense. So my question is this to you: how have you been able to balance the demanding career, family life, and of course, still pursuing something as rigorous as a PhD?
I told you, when I finished my secondary school, Holy Child College, I finished it before. I went to do my A-levels at the Federal School of Art and Science. I wasn't able to get admission. So the time span, I think I gained admission in 1990 to University of Lagos. And then I started...
Greatest Great. So we know ourselves.
Yes, so I couldn't, after my first degree, I couldn't continue with my master's. Somewhere I started work, and then somewhere along the line, I got married. My husband was going here and there, I was relocating. I started nursing children. There was no time to continue school, So I did my MSc, you won't believe it, recently.
Okay.
My master's, when my children, got my daughter, my first daughter will be 27, 28, yeah, thereabout. So I did my MSc when my daughter was graduating. And I did that not out of choice, but because of the exigencies at the time. It wasn't possible, it wasn't feasible, because of so many things. Given my background, I didn't have those opportunities to do that. So I still have to support my husband, we have to build a family, and all that. So all those things stretched the period I returned to school. So, but when, after my children, my daughter was graduating, my two children were in university, I told my husband, I said, look, all my needs, don't be professor, now I go back to school. you know, and I live on the outskirts of Abuja. So you can imagine. My husband was like, how would you be getting? I said, bros, don't worry. Bros, don't worry. But the truth is that I eventually, enrolled for my master's, and my darling husband would sometimes take me to cafe.
Okay.
Take me
National State
himself.
University?
Yes, take me to cafe. During my exams, my husband would take me, suspend his business, and take me to school and wait for me. So after my MSc, I think I did my project was so good. My supervisor and I said, "But Claire, do your PhD." In fact, one of my professors, all my friends, Professor Uche Waleke, I'm sure you must have heard about him, said, "I will buy a PhD for you." And I said, "What do I want to do with PhD? At this age, I'm retiring very soon. What do I want to do with PhD?" But somehow, he got the form, yes, and it's a full time. And then my DG, is a very dynamic, wonderful man. I like Dembers. If he gives you opportunity to, to realize yourself, if you have stuff, he gives you the opportunity. So when I applied, he approved it. So I would finish Goodmorning Nigeria at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I would take off for full-time lectures for the past 5 years.
Well done. This is where we have to say well done. And many thanks to Daddy for supporting you all the way through, as well as the DG, Mr. Dembers. When you looked at the future of broadcasting and journalism in Nigeria, what still gives you hope?
What gives me hope? If I tell you the truth, if I had a choice, I won't do broadcasting in Nigeria. I won't. Because every station today has a side to take. Everybody has a side to take. The ethics of objectivity, fair play, is just, we just pay lip service to that. Go to Sky News, watch Sky News, watch BBC, watch CNN. They don't care. They call you out. But in a very decent manner. Can you do that today? That's really Nigeria. No, just answer me.
Depending on the situation of things or whatever you're handling.
It was only during the time of Ediro.
You know what I
you guys relax.
It's important, yes.
Yes. I know. It was only during the time of Uncle Ediro that the FRCN became a bit relaxed and all that. And now, yes, we in it, we're also trying to, find a way around all this. But digital broadcasting has a future. And we will remain relevant. Broadcasting will ever remain relevant because a lot of people want to hear. Because if you're not there, then the world is blind. People become blind to what is happening. Look at what is happening in the Middle East and within US, Israel, and all that. Assuming you don't have the diverse, media outlets, what happens? You won't even know what is happening. Some people in the US don't even know that Nigeria is a country. They don't know. They don't even know where Nigeria is on the map. They don't know that there is a place called Africa, a continent called Africa. They don't know. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. So broadcasting is very much relevant. But what I fear most is the how, the content of what we give, and the how. We must define what we want, how we want to do it. If we want to remain an impartial gatekeeper, that people expect us to be. Yes. Then we must know what to do about that, and then we must know how to do about that. We must know those to give licenses to. what they want to do with those licenses. You must know what owners of potential TV stations want to do with their stations.
Okay.
You must know that it is not politically motivated. You want to own a station just to propagate, or to castigate, or to send fake stuff, fake misinformation and all that. Because broadcasting is there to feed the people. It's to enlighten the people. So you get informed, you get entertained, and you get enlightened. But today we have so many fake stories. You don't even know what to believe. The only stations today that you will tune to and say, okay, this is the truth. It's FRCN and NTA.
I was going to say that. Because you
Yes.
would have to verify information
Yes.
before
You're very thorough.
So, on a final note, Ma, what is your goodwill message for FRCN?
For Radio Nigeria.
Yeah.
I used
marking its 75th.
Yes,
anniversary.
I remember the first is it sick tune when I was young. It was NBC. Okay, there was NBC 2. That was Radio Nigeria 2.
Okay.
So it used to be NBC 2 AM FM stereo, and then Radio Nigeria 2 AM FM stereo. That came. I don't know what you have now. I don't know what you have
We
now.
have the clock ticking. Bing, bing.
So these are very emotional, very sick tunes, and there's so many others. Of course, we used to have RN3, Radio Nigeria 3. That was the pidgin arm. Then you have the national station. You have Radio Nigeria 2. You have Radio Nigeria 3. Bishop Ratino was the coordinator of Radio Nigeria 3 because it was the pidgin section there. I also tried it, but it didn't work. So today, honestly, I feel like it's homecoming for me, and I'm so delighted, and I'm always delighted to meet with anybody from Radio Nigeria. I'm really happy for this opportunity. At 75, wow, 75!
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's huge. That's huge.
Absolutely.
That's huge. So I'm happy to be part of it, and I wish Radio Nigeria is stronger, and I wish we will regain our. It's not lost glory, the glorious past, because in those days we used to have quite iconic jingles. We used to have a very, very entertaining, promos and all that, and people identified with Radio Nigeria, and I think that we still have it. We have the people, we have the resources. I'm just saying what you have around, and I see the innovations, I see the renovation. I'm so happy with it, the ambience, and I know that the road is still far, and I know that we can achieve much more together. I wish everyone working here the grace of God. I wish you, and I wish that above all things that our envelopes will really, take us home.
Thank you very much. So I've been speaking with Claire Adelabu-AbdulRazak, the Assistant Director of News, Nigerian Television Authority, the anchor of the flagship Sunday evening program, Newsline, and the pioneer anchor of Good Morning Nigeria on Nigerian Television Authority. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, and thank you indeed for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much. So until next time, bye-bye.